Boudoir, we discuss life adventures, challenges, and the power of personal branding. I'm your host, Julia Giuliati. Welcome. My name is Julia Giuliati, and I'm a portrait photographer. I enjoy meeting extraordinary people. That's why I created this podcast, so you can enjoy them too. And today, my guest is Victor Neufeld.
Hello,
Who
Julia.
is extraordinary. From being senior executive producer 2020 ABC News,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
To tango dancer,
Yes.
to jazz singer.
Yes.
How did it all happen?
Well, that's a pretty open-ended question. It just happened. I have certain interests, ambitions, and they all actually are connected.
How it's all connected? That's my question.
Well, I have a theory about being born and growing up as a child and developing your life as an adult. And you are kind of buffeted around as a child by life experiences and how good or bad or disturbed your parenting, your childhood experiences are, and how blessed you are if you're in good company with your parents and they are healthy and they take care of you, or if they're not and you are faced with trauma or happiness. All that builds a personality. So somehow, as a young boy and as a teenager, I felt a certain home with kind of the world around me as seen through a kind of an artistic, musical, humane environment.
Who were your parents?
Well, I had a pretty hard early childhood. My mother was a Hungarian refugee immigrant who was sent by her family from Hungary as a young girl to live in the Bronx with relatives before World War II, leaving her family behind. She had 4 brothers and parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles in this small town outside of Budapest, and she was sent here, and as the only girl. And she was living her life in the early 40s as a kind of young teenager, fell in love, got married, had me. Her husband, my biological father, died very young when she was 26 or so, and I was an infant. Some mysterious ailment then in the South Bronx, still not clear what it was. So she was a widow. And then she heard around that time when World War II ended that her entire family was in the gas chambers and perished in the gas chambers. Her mother, her father, her aunt, her uncle, her 2 grandparents, and she didn't know what happened with her brothers. So she was in mourning and in a state of terrible grieving from losing her new husband and my biological father and her family. So I grew up, I remember, in a cloud of sadness, grief from my mother, who was a loving, warm woman. But then she remarried at the age of 6, when I was 6, which if you study Freud, it's a very delicate age for a young boy to have a new man enter his life and take his mother away.
Right.
And this man turned out to be not a very nice man, very difficult with her and me. So I had a lot of struggles, but I always felt a great connection to my mother, the female, the connection to that.
How that experience
Well, I like
reflected in
music.
your
Well, I mean, I was thrown
life?
into the world just like any other 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, playing with boys, playing sports, getting bullied, bullying other kids, hanging out, developing attention to girls. And when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so it was pretty normal. But I always liked music, and I always liked the concept of entertainment and art and drawing. And I always did that. But I always came up with great ideas and discovered the guitar and the ukulele and bongo drums when calypso began. This was in the 60s. And Harry Belafonte and my mother, who was this Jewish, Hungarian woman from the Bronx, fell in love with Harry Belafonte. This beautiful Caribbean man who had this medallion around his neck down to his waist with his shirt open. And I'm looking at my mother while I was sitting, on the floor doing my homework, this nice in a house dress, drooling over photos of this beautiful black man, Harry Belafonte, thinking, I've got to figure out what he has. Because all boys really model their potential, I think, not love life, but life with women through early experiences. And they say that the first love of a man is his mother, and she
Yes.
carries him on her breast and her neck and cuddles him and soothes him. That's pretty powerful, I always thought. And now, actually,
Well,
when
it's the same as daughter and the father.
daughter and father,
Absolutely.
same. If you have a strong father who's loving and caring and supportive, it's very important.
Yes.
Very important.
I'm very lucky in that sense.
Yes. So your success or your sense of confidence comes from that. I learned to sing and play the guitar, and then learned to write poetry and short stories, and so that was my world. But I always liked journalism and the news, and I would watch news when it was very primitive when I was in high school. And somewhere along the way in college, I started doing underground films, kind of what they call, kind of the pre-Andy Warhol, bizarre underground 16 millimeter films that were outlawed on campus because they were too provocative. And so the future was either going to be a filmmaker or a photographer, because I did a lot of that as well. But I really wanted I wanted to make money. And I did not believe that photography or filmmaking had a future. Because, I would go into the city. This was all happening in Jersey City. I'd go into the city and see, guys with their cameras and kind of wandering around and looking pretty destitute.
So the producer is a logical step.
So journalism and documentaries was a career that was starting big time then. So it was the continuation of that. And so I thought I could make money in TV news and journalism. So I did that in graduate school and got a job. Music and TV news and documentaries there's a connection. And there's a connection to my life because you have to, in journalism, if you reach a wide audience, you have to appeal a certain humanistic interest in people. It can't be dry and it can't be dull. It has to have humanity. And music is all about touching the heart. And so there's a connection. So when I started my career in news, I always had a good instinct for what was an interesting story. And an interesting story is what people respond to in their heart and their lives. And music is the same. So there is an overlap. No one really.
You're entertainer from the beginning.
Yes. And a lot of it is just the roots of my psyche as a child, I think. Because you had to, if you are in a family and you are out in the world, you have to please the people you love. And if you please the people you love, you have to understand at the age of 3 or 4 or 6 or 8, why is that? Is it because you're entertaining them? Is it because you're making them happy? If you are a kind of a brat, or an angry, unhealthy, emotional child, you're not going to please a lot of people.
Right.
So it was a very delicate walk I walked, but naturally. I became very successful early on in TV news.
How many years you've been there?
Well, I started at Channel 5, which was then Metro Media. Now it's Fox 5. Right out of graduate school as a producer of their weekend show. So that was late 70s. mid to late 70s. That was the time of Woodstock, and the city was very poor, lots of crime, crack epidemic in the late 70s, and there was lots of high ratings for news shows. So, and then it was local news in New York, like any place. It's very fast moving, and it's all about the weather and sports and travel and commuting and crime. And we can burn anybody out. So I wanted to work for a national organization, and I applied at ABC. And that was before 2020. That was on the evening news, and I learned the craft there. And then 2020 was launched, and I was put on there as a senior producer. The executive producer left after a few years, and I was promoted. But 2020 was very similar. It's basically all about what touches people and what's important.
And it was entertaining.
Oh, yeah. It had to be because it was on at 10 o'clock. It still is on Fridays. So I always liked to sing, and that career for 2020 took all my time. So, but eventually, after 20, 30 years of doing that, I got back into enjoying singing. And when you sing, you're communicating something important. You're communicating a story about something that touches the life of the audience, that they feel. And if you're a good TV news producer, you do the same. In my view of it, it's a real parallel. And no one really talks about it because no one has done what I do. It's a curiosity, you know. But I always had the voice.
How your colleague reacted on your new interest in becoming a jazz singer? So corporate world,
it was really everybody
it's a
had
different
fun with
perception.
It. Yes, because people in my career, when they reach a point of being an executive producer, generally spend their leisure time playing golf, you know, or moving to the suburbs.
Yeah,
that
so
was not my thing.
singing is not the logical
No.
step, especially Argentine tango. That's
Yes.
taking
But
way.
singing and Argentine tango are connected because it's all about the male, female. And most songs that you sing as jazz are all about love and romance and love lost and love gained. And so there's a lot of male, female in jazz, tango, jazz and tango. So,
How did the idea of tango came about?
you know, I always liked it. And I once went to this club that you and I have gone to, La Nacional, and I was intrigued by it because I read about it one night when I was in graduate school in Brooklyn. I was in graduate school in Brooklyn. But I put it off. The whole idea of developing a closeness with the female without developing a relationship, I thought was brilliant. I mean, it is brilliant.
It is.
Because it really creates a certain intimacy without any real responsibility, which could be very beneficial to the soul. You know, you just feel the other person, and then
You're not threatened.
You're
with
polite.
The longer commitment.
Yes. No, but you're polite. You're respectful,
Yes,
and it's all good. And that was also strange to my colleagues. Journalism generally is pretty straight business because you have a lot of responsibility, and you can hurt your own career by making mistakes. So you become pretty straightforward and conservative.
So how did your colleague react?
When I was singing?
When you were dancing first?
Let's see. They thought it was, hey, it's cool, it's interesting. I wouldn't do it, right? But then they said that to me. They wouldn't do it. It's so odd.
And then you start singing. And
Well,
start
singing
inviting
they thought
them.
was clever and cute and fun. And I would give the staff a night off sometimes to come to my shows when I started at Don't Tell Mom, is where you were a few times. I say, I'm singing tonight. I handed out flyers to everybody's desk around the office. And it was just an interesting curiosity. The boss had a curious hobby, but they thought it was very gutsy. and fun. You know, I'm a very normal person, and in terms of my activities, you know, I'm not crazy, and I don't hang off of airplanes or bungee jump or anything. And I mean, my soul is not normal, or my ambitions are a little eccentric, but this is all within the range of what people should do with their lives. You know, it's all very acceptable in one's life. And my colleagues thought it was interesting, and now some of them come and see me. You know, my ex-colleagues, friends, and they find it to be kind of clever, interesting. You know, they're happy for me.
Have you convinced anybody to start
No,
learning tango?
no. Oh, tango, no. Tango and singing is very small of interest. It's just for a man. It puts you out there, singing especially. You're on in front of a crowd and you are singing songs of love and loss and you longing and yearning and being happy. All those things, yearning, longing, being happy, exposing your heart to pretty much frowned upon by the average guy. You're either putting yourself into that or putting a mask on when you sing.
Which one is you?
Well, when you do, when well, it's a good question because you can sing a song. I don't I don't do songs generally of loss or heartbreak because it's a little too uncomfortable if I want to do an entertaining show, and I don't think I have that talent to really sell it. So I do more upbeat, fun songs. So it's not as vulnerable as some, brilliant jazz singers do, male and female, when they have wonderful voices and they expose their heart and soul and be vulnerable. It makes you it's you're more vulnerable, and you really have to pull it off because if you can't pull it off, then it becomes sappy and silly and icky. So this is a hobby. But it's
But
not.
an incredible show.
I've done well,
Such an
and I'm very
entertainer.
yes, and I'm very proud of what I do. And I tell people to come because if I didn't think I was good, I wouldn't invite anybody. Uh, and but there are levels,
I've
There.
been in so many of your shows during
Yes,
these years,
yes,
and it's absolutely entertaining.
yes,
And I'll bring all my friends to
yes.
see and
But what I
enjoy the
do
evening.
is I it's more the whole ambiance, of choosing the songs. In fact, going back to the two professions, or going back to being a photographer or a journalist or a filmmaker or a documentary maker and singing, the material that you choose, the material of a photo or the story that you're reporting on, a documentary you're doing, and are similar to the songs I sing. I always had a reputation at 2020 for knowing what the audience is interested in and choosing only stories that I knew would generate large ratings. And that was my key to success.
What was the most touching story in all your years at 2020 that you
There was so
remember?
many, but
Couple.
we won the most awards and made the biggest effort for the series. It was a series. It was started small and grew, and it became really a national issue, an international issue, actually. This was about the, how do I describe it? Romania, the dictator, Ceausescu. It's a Catholic country. He was a dictator. No one was allowed to go to Romania for many years, and he died. I think, he was removed. And what was discovered was hundreds of orphanages of children that were never aborted because abortion was illegal, who had to be given to the church, just like in Ireland, actually, and raised in these orphanages. And the world discovered that there were hundreds of orphanages and thousands of children who were abused and left in very terrible conditions. Lots of families wanted to adopt in this country and couldn't find children they wanted. Mm-hmm. And they discovered this. So we went along with one of these families and did a tour of lots of these places and uncovered these beautiful children in terrible conditions, tied to their cribs. So we uncovered this kind of scandal that was hidden, and initiated through our program, we did many others following these couples, and adopting lots of children, being very happy. That made lots of news. This was in the 80s, mm-hmm. late 80s. Wow. But we did many big interviews with Barbara Walters, all the presidents, prime ministers. Did the first interview with Boris Yeltsin. Normally, if you grow up as a boy and into a man, it's a very competitive life. You got to be tough, you have to be smart, you have to be quick, you have to be competitive, and it's competitive. And so you have a shell, you develop a shell. And because other guys are also tough, and the tougher you are, the most ambitious, the more successful you are. So if you're a softie, or kind of passive, or ambivalent, you don't do as well. So men are trained and conditioned to be that way. And that could be hard on women as partners. So, I mean, I didn't grow up that way, because I had a stepfather who was very tough on me, and I was always kind of figuring out ways to get my way without confrontations. Mm-hmm. Anyway, as I started working with the women in TV news, they were all very successful and brilliant. And beside Barbara, there was Diane Sawyer, and Connie Chung, and Katie Couric, and Christiane Amanpour, who's at CNN, and at CNN, Paula Zahn, and very tough, very successful, accomplished women who were sort of divas in this field, but deservedly so. And with her, I had a reputation for being able to work with her without confronting her. And, she was a tough woman and really had a hard life becoming successful. She had to be very male in her ambitions, cutthroat, overwhelming the competition with all kinds of inappropriate, sneaky ways to get interviews. I mean, she was not a killer, but she was dynamic and aggressive, but very talented and brilliant. So I got along with her because I never put myself in a position of competing with her, because I was the boss. And she was also sort of the boss. So we had to work together. Mm-hmm. But I found my way of living and dealing with people as respecting her talent. She saw that, and I accommodated her. And so we worked well together. And so that really goes back to the strain of my life.
How did this experience, an old experience, moving you to tango world and interactions with women on a dance floor? How is it similar? How is it different?
Tango really glorifies and values being a gentleman, and yet at the same time leading, right? And there is this very interesting balance. As you know, and most people don't, when I explain this to them, it's pretty eye-opening, that the women are passive and only can follow and not lead. And it's this macho Latino culture, which is brilliant in tango, where the man has to be a gentleman but also dominant. And that's a very fine line one walks. I mean, there's some men who are like the idea of being dominant and are gruff and coarse. And if you like tango as a man, you like the position of leading and the position of choosing the woman. And most women, I think, stay away from tango or don't even know about it or do other dancing because they like to freely dance and choose their partners and stop and start when they want to. But in tango, the woman has to wait, right? So I found that
Well, I can
appealing.
argue with you on that.
Really?
Yes.
In what way?
So you talking about the traditional tango.
Yes.
When I'm talking about tango, I am also taking into consideration now Nueva Tango, alternative tango, very young tango. And
Okay.
the rules are changing.
Well,
And
that's true.
also, I learned tango traditional way, with traditional music, with all the traditional rules. But for me, that box is too small. So I am incorporating other dancers and
Okay.
other
Yes.
behaviors in
Yes.
tango. So I can actually argue in the fact that women are not just followers and have to wait. You can actually, what I do, choose a man. When I come to dance, I choose a man that I'm gonna dance with. And I will make sure that he choose me by me choosing him first.
That's very clever.
Then also during the dance, when you reach a certain level, the line of who is leading who kind of disappears. And then it becomes just the exchange of energy, and then you feel, I'll say 50-50 for sure. Energy here, energy there, and then by the end of the dance, you really don't even know who did who. So there are different
Yes.
variations.
Well, I'm talking about
You're talking about
traditional.
traditional tango, yes.
Yeah, and I enjoy it a great deal, and I think it's a dance. It's the essence of the dance between male and female, and it's a wonderful creation, spontaneous creation of history and art and culture. I mean, it's
How often you dance?
how often? I try to dance once, twice a week.
Do you
And
have a particular partners that you dance with, or you
no,
try to be?
yeah, as you know, certain places, certain evenings have different people that you do know, or more strangers on different nights, depending on what part of the city and what time. No, I think the tango community is fascinating, full of history and art and characters, and
What do you find more challenging? The most challenging in tango world?
well,
You in tango world?
I find just the advancement of the skills the most challenging, because there are great skills a man has to learn in terms of the steps, turning, and and I've taken lessons, but not enough, and you have to stay with it and be very proficient, which I'm not.
Well, at this level, you're a really good dancer, and you have a lot of dance experience
I do.
already. So if somebody will come to you and ask for suggestion, how I should approach tango, what should I do next, and what would you recommend?
Male or
How to
female?
learn? Oh, let's talk about male.
Well, to the extent that I'm good, it's based on a certain musicality that I have, and not the steps that one learns. I would just suggest you do as much as you can, go as much as you can, and take as many lessons as you can, because there are many things to learn.
Do you think you
And
learn musicality, or you're kind of born with musicality?
you're born with it. Yeah, I don't think you can. It's like creativity. The dance
So
is.
some people are doomed.
I think so.
That's not
Unfortunately,
a happy ending.
no. That's life. Like,
Okay,
that's
what
like a
else?
song I always end my show with. That's life.
I remember that one.
No, I mean, but if a male wants to do this, it's a blessing that you've learned it and know about it. You meet a lot of interesting women and men. There's a wide range of people, and it's also the history of Argentine tango. It draws everybody to go to Buenos Aires and learn it and the culture. It's just enhances one's life. That's all. You have to keep enhancing your life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, unless you kind of put yourself in reverse.
Yes. Would you notice who is a better dancer by
Yes,
just observing?
yes.
How?
Well, the basics are important to identify. The posture, the stance. I mean, the embrace.
How would you decide, would I love to dance with this woman? Oh no, I'll pass this one.
That's an unanswerable question
Why not? Let's try.
because
What are your parameters?
I mean, I assume that I am in a certain range of this answer. It would be in a certain range where you get a sense,
What's
almost.
important for you? To see, to feel, in order to want to dance with
Well,
that person?
it's like anything else. Is it the size? Is it the stature? Is it the clothing? Is it that it reflects a certain person's essence?
So what is it?
It's a combination. It's a combination. And obviously, if I've seen this person before, and it's not a stranger, if you go to dance tango and there's a stranger, then you have to break a little bit of the ice, as opposed to a person you danced with before and you have a relationship of past dances. So that is part of the mix. Sammy likes you.
Sammy, I like you too.
If it's a person I've danced with before and know, uh, that's a, that's positive and that's a great advantage. If you invite a stranger to dance, there's the capaceo, right? Which is the nod and making the eye contact. And the person's supposed to respond with the eye contact. If the response is flat or the response has a smile, it's life. It's subtle. There are layers. There are nuances. And that's what makes it a wonderful thing to do because it's all very complicated,
You consider yourself a successful person?
relatively. They're probably more successful, but relatively, yes, yes. But yet I'm not. I don't know. Let's see. What do I still have to and want to accomplish? Definitely a amateur professional amateur. I do get paid, but it's minimal, so I lose money because I hire really good musicians, and the band is 4 musicians right now, and they're the best, and they support me, make me look and sound good. So that's what I pay for, and most musicians actually. I've learned that most musicians I have met and worked with are wonderful, positive men and women. And they see the world as a happy place, even though they're probably many of them pretty poor because a musician's life is not a rich life of great income. But they do what they're happy doing. And most of them are in that state of being cooperative and engaging and positive. So I spent a lot of time in a very ambitious manner pitching the band and me with videos to mainstream clubs and cabaret rooms and jazz clubs where people go and pay money to hear professional jazz. And I'm sort of getting into that. And that's a major achievement and a very proud part of my current life. Like this place, Swing 46, which is a real dance club that have live swing bands. And I've pitched my stuff to them for 2, 3 years. And for the first time, we have a gig there. So that's
Wow.
big success.
Yes.
So, that's my current ambition. We play at restaurants, and we play at Manny's, and we play at this where
You
you can.
play every weekend
Yes, every
somewhere,
weekend, yes, but I
like
lose
three,
lots of
four
money.
times.
But, I don't have a Porsche or a yacht or a boat or a house in the Hamptons.
Well, you have a beautiful place in New York City, so.
Yes. So I, I invest whatever savings I have in these wonderful group of musicians, and it makes me very happy. So
Very nice.
I guess I'm blessed.
You are.
And that's the ultimate beginning and end, right? So if I can be happy singing as opposed to be happy with a Porsche, it's a similar happiness. It just doesn't get me to the Hamptons.
You can always have Uber.
It's true. You're creating beautiful sounds from your own soul and talent. It's like an artist, it's like a painter or an architect or a photographer. When the work is seen by a human being or listened to, it makes a person stimulated and happy and moved. So that's sort of a miracle if you think about it. I mean, I'm not putting down other professions or being in finance or accounting or doing someone's taxes or driving a bus, or you're not doing something that stimulates another person to the extent that art does or music does. So all those people who do that, to me, are fascinating. You can find who you are and not be successful in it, or you can find who you are and not have the tools to develop it. Then you have many obstacles.
Do you think there is a certain age that it has to happen?
I would say midlife, early midlife. If you are in your 20s and 30s struggling, saying, I thought I liked this, I didn't, and I tried this, and I didn't, and I liked this woman, but she was not what I really wanted, then you've been unsuccessful. And something has gone wrong, and you probably should find help in some sort of ministry or a therapy or somebody to guide you and help you, because it's the most important thing in one's life.
So then the state of happiness is the natural progression of adults getting older and wiser.
I've never discussed it with anybody as a subject matter, the source of happiness, because everybody's happiness is a little different and everybody has a different road. So I thought about myself, because I'm the only person who can help me. You can have wonderful friends and beautiful family and spouses and loving wives and husbands and sisters and brothers, but at the end,
it's an inside job.
It's an inside job, totally, yes.
Are you happy now?
I'm Jewish, There was this line in this wonderful sort of Jewish comedy movie, well, Italian Jewish, and Lovers and Other Strangers. It was first a Broadway show, and I don't think anybody can see it anymore, in which an Italian family, had a son who they wanted to marry his girlfriend, and he's hesitating, and they're all around the kitchen table, and why don't you get married already? The father's saying. The son says, I want to be happy, Dad. Look at you guys, his parents in their 50s. I mean, look at you. You're always fighting, and I want to be happy. You're not happy, And the father says, happy? Who's happy? Well, don't you want to be happy? Happy? Oh, you don't want to be happy. Well, what are you? We're content. That's it? He says, yes. He looks at his wife. we're content, aren't we? Yeah, we're content. So I always thought about that as maybe that's the ultimate wisdom. Where it's an inside job. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm happy. I really cannot answer that because it's still a struggle.
So there is more research to do.
Yes, always till the end. But I'm optimistic.
I see that.
Well, I thought for a while that, I do believe in the power of one's early life experiences. I said, as a birth year, second year, third year toddler, as you grow to absorb the world around you, and what the world around you are your parents and your siblings, and little by little the rest of the world. So somewhere I connected, I guess, with the woman at that point as I was an infant, because I had this terrible tragedy around me in my life. And it was important to see, I think, in my deepest, darkest memories, which are not formed, but they're really emotions or feelings. If I can make this woman a little happy or smile, that counters everything else. So whenever I was able to do that, I think, whether I was being entertaining, or I ate dinner, or I kept a diaper on. I don't know.
So you found that your happiness depends on your connection with other
slivers
people.
of happiness, to me, I think that as an infant meant a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so singing, if is a sort of connection. And actually, when I was starting out in the Don't Tell Mamas, which is a cabaret club, and it's dark, and I'm on the stage, and I can see various faces with maybe a candle on the table. And I noticed then, my first maybe a few years of doing maybe one show every 3 months, that the men, because it's intimate, and I'm a male, the men in the audience were not that happy or not that comfortable looking at me this close. It makes men a little awkward.
How interesting.
It does. And they were kind of sort of looking at the piano player, maybe, because I was singing songs of love. Most songs are about romance and love. I love you. I want to dance with you. I want to conquer you. Let's go out tonight. That's natural. Most music is about love. And and then when I would see a woman's face enjoying it, I realized that I'm doing something that makes me happy. And it's like anything else one does. If one is an athlete and throws a touchdown, and the crowd cheers, and he's helped his team win, it's similar feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my version of it. So
but
it could be
the observation is really interesting. So if you put a man in a more intimate atmosphere, they're more vulnerable than if you put a man in a more light, casual setting.
I only think it's in this case.
Yes, but
a male is singing songs of romance. And if I'm in the audience and I'm watching a male performer, and the room holds 40, 50 people, it's very tight. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And he's singing. As
compared to now, you performing in a more lightest places, more party. Yeah. So they're more relaxed.
Yeah, it was more party. And it's not as intimate, and I don't sing those love songs I was learning early on. What'll I do if you are far away?
So you change your songs with years too.
And I'm so blue. What'll I do? And then if I stare at a man in the eyes, it's not surprising. So love songs are not problematic, but they need to be chosen well.
So the choice of songs now are more neutral.
They're more generic.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more neutral.
You become in Switzerland.
Yes, I've become Switzerland. A Switzerland crooner. But that's natural. Like if you go to in a bathroom for men and they're all lined up in urinals, no man is going to look at each other while they're at a urinal.
I have no idea.
Well, that's the way it is. Because you're doing your thing. But really, I don't know what women do, but men don't say, "Hey, how's your day going?" It's just the nature of men, when something is intimate, it's with a woman, unless you're gay. And now, but that's so. So if I'm gay and I'm singing a love song and there are men in the audience, I would sing to that man.
Mm-hmm.
But I happen to like to sing to women. Many of the songs that were the great classics that I sang were written by immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
and Italian, Russian, Eastern European immigrants. And they became the songs of the great group musicals.
Would you say in 10 years you will be singing the similar songs, or you will change your repertoire completely?
I don't know. I'm singing songs from the 1920s now, 30s, 40s, 50s. The songs from the 1920s are very, very fun songs and clever. They hold up.
Mm-hmm.
And people dance to them. So they'll always be around. And I don't even know how to even describe the music of the moment. The songs should be about pleasure or the heart of longing or yearning, not aggressive. The best man or the best advocate of music is the softest men or the advocates of music. The fingertips of the music. So a lot of those songs that I like are all about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was wonderful. If you like this episode, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow for more.
Nothing I said is going to hurt me in the future. No, I'm not. I didn't say anything embarrassing or stupid. Good.
I was hoping you will say something.